We have a president who thinks nothing of climbing onto the roof of his car to shout two-term to a crowd of people buying tomatoes. A head of state who casually tells Kenyans that unnamed others hawana akili, that they have no brains. Words spoken lightly from a microphone, but felt heavily in a country already fraying at the edges. And in Mbeere North, a simple by-election has morphed into a showdown between a former deputy president and the current one, each fighting to crown himself king of the mountain over a parliamentary seat. A seat whose biggest problem should be water, roads, or youth unemployment, not national ego contests and power projections. So I find myself asking, what are we doing? What is this? And how is any of it good for a country that is already struggling to breathe? Because you see, politics does not exist in a vacuum. It sets the tone. And the tone we have now, the noise, the chest thumping, the insults, filters into the national mood, and from there into the economy. Every economist will tell you markets run on confidence, on stability, on predictability. But when leaders behave like candidates instead of statesmen, when every weekend is a rally, when every microphone is a chance to attack opponents instead of addressing policy, when governance feels like theater, what message are we sending to the country, to business owners, to investors, to ordinary Kenyans wondering how to plan their next month, their next loan, their next school fees payment? You see, politics creates the emotional climate of a nation. And right now, that climate feels hot, unsettled, and unpredictable. You can feel it in conversations in matatus. You can hear it in boardrooms. You can see it in the slow pace of new investments. You can sense it in families who are anxious, tired, and unsure. Because when a country is in campaign mode, it cannot be in governance mode. And when leaders treat every day like a political rally, the country absorbs that instability. It becomes jittery, reactive, suspicious, divided. Social cohesion suffers, the economy strains, and the national psyche tires. Now, this is not about being sentimental. It's about being honest. A nation cannot stay in permanent agitation and expect its economy to grow. It cannot shout its way into unity, and it cannot heckle its way into stability. Kenya needs calm, it needs sobriety, and it needs leadership that lowers the temperature instead of raising it for political applause. We deserve a country that gets to breathe. A country where leaders are busy governing, not performing. A country where politics knows its place and stays in it. Until then, the noise will continue, but so will the fatigue, and ultimately, so will the cost, paid not by politicians on car rooftops, but by ordinary Kenyans on the ground. That's my take tonight.
This week, our cameras took us to Dukana in Marsabit County, a place where hunger is not just a crisis, but a generation-to-generation inheritance. A place where drought is a way of life, and a place where leadership, quite frankly, is missing in action. We met Mzee Bobo Sora, a 70-year-old man, sitting quietly inside his manyata, blind, frail, starving, and abandoned by systems meant to protect him. This is a man who once walked proudly across the vast plains with more than 200 goats. Today, he cannot even see the 5 goats he has left, and he says, life has lost meaning. Imagine being so overwhelmed by hunger and despair that death feels easier than waking up to another day. But as painful as Bobo's story is, it is not the only one. Such sad incidents are repeated across Laisamis, Kor and Bala. Children born into hunger, mothers skipping meals, community health workers unpaid for 14 months, dispensaries with empty shelves, and a county where lighting a fire to cook is a luxury, not a routine. And so the question must be asked, where are the leaders of Marsabit County? Where is the MCA of Dukana? Where is the Member of Parliament? The woman representative? Where is the senator? Where is the governor? All those elected with promises of transformation and devolution? One woman in Dukana said it plainly. They only come when they want our votes. It is a damning statement, but an honest one. While families in Dukana boil maize and beans as their only meal in 24 hours, their leaders are nowhere to be seen. Perhaps they're in Nairobi. Perhaps they're in county offices, far from the dust and desperation. But certainly, they're not where they're needed most. It is a stark, painful reminder of leadership failure, an indictment of elected officials who have abandoned the very people whose votes put them in office. According to the Red Cross, more than 740,000 children under 5 in Kenya are acutely malnourished, and over 100,000 pregnant, unlactating women need urgent treatment. These are not just numbers. They are a reflection of a country that continues to respond to predictable crises with surprise, and leaders who continue to act like drought is breaking news event. Northern Kenya has endured drought after drought for decades. Communities lose everything before they have a chance to recover, and yet the leadership remains reactive, never proactive, silent when it matters and loud only during elections. As we tell Mzee Bobo Sora's story, as we show the hunger and desperation in Bala, we must confront an uncomfortable truth. Devolution means nothing if the devolved units cannot even protect the lives of their citizens. The old are dying quietly, the young are growing up hungry, and the leaders, the very ones entrusted with billions of shillings in county budgets, are absent. Which leaves us with a final haunting question. If leadership does not show up in life and death moments like this, then what exactly is it for? And that is my memo.
Religious organizations in Kenya have for decades stood out as pillars of conscience. They weren't just saving souls, they were saving the nation. During the struggle for multi-party democracy, the church marched shoulder to shoulder with the Young Turks. And in the push for a new constitution, they were the nation's moral compass. Kenya's history is rich, replicate even, with unforgettable moments where religious leaders led from the front. Chaplains of liberations, bishops of justice, imams of truth. But sadly, the story today is different. In the last decade, the once booming prophetic voice of Kenya's religious organizations has grown faint, almost drowning out completely where it matters most. The thunderous voices of Bishop Alexander Muge, Bishop Henry Okulu, Reverend Timothy Njoya, Archbishop Ndingi Mwana Nzeki, Sheikh Khalid Balala are now more history lessons than guiding lights. Globally, religion has always been a force in critiquing injustice, mobilizing citizens, challenging state power, and championing democratic reforms. Yet here at home, religious bodies have slipped into a troubling silence, an era of see no evil, speak no evil, and hearing no evil. And even when they do speak, their voices are scattered, timid, and easily lost in the political noise. Where are the stinging sermons on social justice? Where are the fiery spiritual reflections on governance and integrity? Where is the pulpit that once rattled the state and awakened the public? One can argue that Kenya today is not Moi's Kanu era. But religion doesn't only respond, it shapes consciousness. That is the essence of Kairos theology, that is the spirit of the prophetic ministry. Allow me to take you back to Kenya's Cairo document of 1991, a bold theological reflection on the state of the nation. It confronted corruption, ethnicity, human rights abuses, electoral malpractices, and economic injustices. It was a moral mirror and a rallying call. Dear religious leaders, you can still reclaim that prophetic role. The Damascus moment is not lost. Kenya is still yearning for a unified, unwavering moral voice. It cannot be that your voices only rise when your interests are threatened, loud at fundraisers, and silent on national crisis. You must rise above partisan comfort and speak when it is necessary, not just when it is convenient. Revive the Kairos spirit. Dust off the document anchored at NCCK. Let it guide your sermons, your pastoral letters, and your collective conscience, because Kenya cannot afford a silent pulpit. Not now, not when corruption thrives, inequality widens, and public morality is tested daily. Find the prophetic fire again. Let every sermon challenge the preacher and the congregation alike. This is your watershed moment. Redefine your mission and reclaim your identity as theologians of the people, for the people, with the people. That is my bond tonight.
Simseme na nguvu. Ground inasema aje? Ground inasema aje?